The Grand Hall of the Galactic Council stood silent as Ambassador Kelrix presented the latest reports. His four eyes scanned the data crystals floating before him, each one showing another lost world. The Crevassi swarm had consumed 3 more colonies in the past month. Millions dead, billions displaced. "We need more ships," Fleet Commander Zekthal said, his massive frame rising from his seat. The warrior's scales rippled with frustration. "My forces cannot hold against these creatures. They come in endless waves." Kelrix clicked his mandibles together, a gesture of dismissal among his people. "The defense budget is already stretched beyond capacity. We have no more resources to spare." In the corner of the chamber, Archivist Thunora floated in her water-filled observation sphere. Her tentacles moved slowly through the liquid as she listened to the debate. She had lived for 600 years, long enough to remember things others had forgotten. Long enough to know that the Council faced extinction. "Perhaps we should consider the old protocols," Thunora suggested, her voice translating through the sphere's speakers. Several council members turned to look at her. Kelrix made a harsh buzzing sound that his species used for laughter. "Old protocols? You mean the fairy tales about the Terrans?" He shook his head. "Archivist, with respect, we need real solutions, not ancient myths." Thunora's skin changed color, flushing with annoyance. The humans were not myths. They were real. They explored this galaxy long before half the species in this room achieved spaceflight. A younger delegate, barely 20 years in her position, raised a tentative hand. "I studied history. The records say humans disappeared over 800 years ago. Most scholars believe they never existed at all. Just stories told to explain certain archaeological anomalies." "I remember them," Thunora said quietly. "Not personally, but my grandmother did. She met a human once on a trading station at the edge of explored space. She said they were strange creatures. Bipedal with forward-facing eyes like predators. They moved with purpose, always watching, always calculating." Kelrix waved a dismissive claw. "Even if they were real, they are gone now. Dead or vanished, it makes no difference to our current crisis." The debate continued for another hour, going in circles as it had for weeks. No one had answers. No one had solutions. The swarm kept advancing and the council kept retreating. The session ended with nothing resolved. As the delegates filed out, Thunora remained in her chamber accessing the deep archives. She had been searching for weeks, following threads of data that most people considered worthless. Old sensor logs, ancient transmission records, archaeological reports from dead worlds at the galaxy's edge. 3 days later, she found something. A survey team working in the outer veil had detected a signal. It was faint, almost invisible among the cosmic background radiation. But it was artificial, and it was old. Very old. Thunora requested a full investigation. The Council, desperate for any advantage, approved a small science vessel to check the coordinates. The ship arrived at a barren world, a planet that had been dead for millennia. Its atmosphere had been stripped away by solar winds, leaving only a cratered rock orbiting a dying star. But on the surface, partially buried in ancient dust, they found a structure. It was a beacon. The design was unlike anything in the current galactic database. Clean lines, efficient construction, built to last for centuries, and it was still transmitting, powered by a fusion core that had somehow maintained operation for over 800 years. The science team extracted the beacon and brought it back to the council station. Thunora spent weeks working on the translation. The language was ancient, predating most modern records. But slowly, painfully, she began to decode the message. It was a warning. To the inheritors of this galaxy, the message began. "We are the Terran Expeditionary Administration. If you are receiving this transmission, you have reached a level of development sufficient to understand our purpose." The message continued, explaining that humanity had voluntarily withdrawn from galactic space. They had recognized their own aggressive tendencies, their dangerous expansionism, rather than risk war with peaceful species. They had chosen isolation, but they had not abandoned the galaxy entirely. "We have established 13 monitoring stations at strategic points along the galactic rim," the message said. "These beacons will activate in response to existential threats. Should galactic civilization face annihilation, we will return. This is our promise. This is our duty." The final section contained coordinates and a specific transmission frequency. Thunora presented her findings to the council. The reaction was mixed. Some were intrigued. Many were skeptical. A few were openly hostile to the idea. "You want us to call for help from ghosts?" Kelrix demanded. "Even if humans still exist somewhere, why would they care about us? Why would they risk themselves for species they abandoned centuries ago?" "Because the message says they will," Thunora replied. "Because they made a promise." Fleet Commander Zekthal stood again, his voice heavy with defeat. "We have nothing to lose. My fleets are broken. The swarm advances on 3 more colony worlds. In 6 months, they will reach the core systems. If there is even a chance that someone out there can help us, we must try." After hours of debate, the Council voted. By a narrow margin, they approved sending a distress signal to the coordinates provided by the ancient beacon. Thunora encoded the message herself. She included data about the swarm, about the losses sustained, about the desperate state of galactic civilization. She sent it at maximum power, broadcasting into the empty darkness beyond charted space. Then they waited. 3 days passed. Then a week. Then 2 weeks. Nothing. Kelrix visited Thunora in her archive chambers. "Your legends have failed us, archivist. There is no one out there. There never was." But Thunora kept monitoring the sensors, hoping, believing. Somewhere in the darkness between stars, she thought. Someone had to be listening. She had no idea how right she was. The refugee ships streamed past Zekthal's flagship in an endless procession. Thousands of vessels, most of them civilian transports never designed for the journey they now undertook. Families crammed into cargo holds. Children crying in corridors meant for freight. The lucky ones had escaped with their lives. The unlucky ones were still on Varana Prime when the swarm arrived. Zekthal watched the tactical display with growing despair. Red markers indicated swarm positions. They spread across the map like a disease, consuming everything in their path. Blue markers showed Council forces, growing fewer with each passing day. "Commander, we're receiving distress calls from the Korvathi colony," his communications officer reported. "The swarm has breached their orbital defenses. Another world dying. Another billion lives about to be extinguished. How long until our fleet can arrive?" Zekthal asked, though he already knew the answer. 17 hours at maximum speed, too late. Always too late. The swarm did not fight like civilized beings. They had no strategy beyond overwhelming force. No tactics beyond endless assault. Each swarm ship was a biological nightmare. A living vessel that could repair itself by consuming matter. Blast a hole in their hull, and they would seal it with their own flesh. Destroy one ship and 3 more would take its place. Council weapons had been designed for precision warfare against enemies who valued their own survival. The swarm valued nothing. They were a hive mind, a collective consciousness that saw individual ships as disposable cells in a larger organism. Pain meant nothing to them. Loss meant nothing to them. They simply kept coming. Zekthal had lost 3 entire battle groups in the past month. Ships and crews that had trained together for years, vaporized in minutes of brutal combat. He carried the names of every dead captain in his personal database. 43 names. 43 commanders who had trusted him to lead them to victory. He had led them to death instead. "Sir, priority communication from Council Central," the communications officer said. "It's Archivist Thunora." Zekthal accepted the transmission. Thunora's face appeared on his screen, her tentacles moving with unusual agitation. "Commander, I've made progress on the Terran beacon," she said without preamble. "There's more to the message than we initially decoded." "Archivist, with respect, I don't have time for ancient history," Zekthal replied. "I have 3 colonies about to fall and not enough ships to defend any of them. This is relevant, Commander. Please just listen." Something in her voice made him pause. Thunora was not given to dramatics. "The beacon wasn't just a warning," she continued. "It's part of a network. A fail-safe protocol the humans established before they withdrew. According to the data I've decoded, they established 13 of these beacons at strategic locations around the galaxy's edge. And they're all connected to something called the Sentinel Network, a automated defense grid that's been monitoring the galaxy for 8 centuries. Commander, the humans didn't just leave. They've been watching, waiting." Zekthal felt a chill run through his scales. If they've been watching, why haven't they helped? Why let millions die? Because the activation threshold hasn't been met. The system is designed to respond only to extinction-level threats. But Commander, I think that threshold has now been crossed. The swarm qualifies as an existential danger to galactic civilization. You think the humans will come? Thunora's skin flushed a deep blue. a color her species associated with hope. The Council authorized an emergency pulse transmission to the beacon coordinates 3 weeks ago. I've been monitoring for a response, and 2 hours ago I detected something. Massive gravitational distortions at the edge of explored space. Multiple points, all appearing simultaneously. The energy signatures don't match any known technology. Zekthal pulled up his own sensor data. He had been too focused on the immediate tactical situation to notice, but there it was. Strange readings coming from the outer boundary of charted space. Readings that suggested something very large was moving through hyperspace. Multiple somethings. How many? He asked quietly. I don't know. The sensors can't get a clear count. But Commander, the energy output is enormous. Whatever is generating those distortions, it's big. Very big. For the first time in months, Zekthal felt something other than despair. It was a fragile thing, this feeling. He was afraid to name it. Keep monitoring, he ordered. And Archivist? Thank you. The transmission ended. Zekthal turned back to his tactical display. The swarm continued its advance, unaware that something might be coming. Something that the ancient humans had promised would arrive in civilization's darkest hour. 3 days later, the situation grew worse. The swarm launched a coordinated assault on 5 systems simultaneously. Council forces scrambled to respond, but they were stretched too thin. Zekthal made the hardest decision of his career. He ordered a general retreat to Karova Station. Karova was a massive orbital fortress, built centuries ago during a previous conflict. It orbited a gas giant in a strategically important system. If Karova fell, the route to the Council's core worlds would be open. It would be the beginning of the end. Every available ship converged on Karova. Not just military vessels, but armed merchant ships, converted passenger liners, even a few private yachts whose wealthy owners had volunteered for the defense. 50,000 ships in total, a fleet that represented the last organized resistance the Council could muster. The swarm came with 500,000. Zekthal stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the enemy approach. They filled space like a dark cloud, blotting out the stars, beautiful in a horrible way. If beauty could be found in something so utterly dedicated to destruction. All ships, this is Fleet Commander Zekthal, he broadcast on the open channel. Today we make our stand. Today we show the swarm that civilized beings do not surrender quietly. We fight for our families, our worlds, our future. We fight until we cannot fight anymore. And if we must die, we die with honor. The fleet responded with a cacophony of affirmations, each species shouting their own battle cries in their own languages. The swarm did not respond at all. They simply kept coming. Zekthal gave the order to engage. Space erupted into chaos. The battle raged for 6 hours. 6 hours of continuous brutal combat that pushed every Council ship and crew to their breaking point. Zekthal watched his fleet die piece by piece, ship by ship. The swarm came in waves, each assault more ferocious than the last. They crashed against the Council lines like water against rocks, except these rocks were crumbling. Every minute brought new casualty reports. Every minute the tactical display showed more blue markers winking out of existence. Eastern flank is collapsing, the tactical officer reported. The Korvathi battle wing has been overwhelmed. Redirect the reserve squadrons, Zekthal ordered, knowing it wouldn't be enough. Nothing was enough against this tide. On the main view screen, a swarm bioship tore through a Council destroyer. The enemy vessel was massive, all writhing tentacles and pulsing organs visible beneath translucent skin. It latched onto the destroyer like a parasite, and within seconds the Council ship went dark. Dead. Consumed. Commander, Karova Station is taking heavy fire, another officer called out. Their shields are down to 30%. If the station fell, everything fell. Zekthal knew this was the end. They had fought well, but they had lost. In another hour, maybe 2, the swarm would break through completely. After that, nothing stood between them and the core worlds. He thought about his homeworld, his family, the children he would never see again. At least they were far from here. At least they had a few more weeks before the swarm reached them. Sir, sensors are detecting massive spatial distortions, the sensor operator suddenly shouted. Multiple hyperspace exits forming, grid coordinates 773 Mark 8. The swarm is bringing reinforcements? Zekthal's heart sank even further. They were already overwhelmed. No, sir, the signatures are wrong. These aren't bioships. These are... I don't know what these are. The sensor operator threw the data onto the main screen. Zekthal stared at the readings, his mind struggling to process what he was seeing. Hundreds of massive energy signatures all appearing simultaneously in perfect formation behind the swarm's position. Space itself seemed to tear open. Points of brilliant light appeared in the darkness, expanding into swirling vortexes of energy. And from those vortexes, ships emerged. But these were not like any ships Zekthal had ever seen. They were enormous, each one larger than a council battleship. Their hulls were dark, almost black, with geometric designs that spoke of brutal efficiency. No curves, no organic shapes like the swarm used, just angular perfection, every line suggesting deadly purpose, hundreds of them, no thousands. They kept coming. More and more ships emerging from hyperspace in perfect mathematical precision. They arranged themselves in a formation so precise it looked computer-generated. Which Zekthal realized with shock it probably was. Who are they? Someone whispered. The new fleet hung in space, silent and still. Not a single ship moved. Not a single transmission was sent. They simply waited, as if giving the swarm a chance to recognize what had arrived. The swarm, incapable of fear, continued their assault on the council fleet. They ignored the newcomers, focused entirely on finishing their prey. That was a mistake. Without warning, without communication, the Dark Fleet opened fire. What happened next would be recorded in every military academy for the next 1,000 years as an example of overwhelming technological superiority. The weapons were like nothing Zekthal had ever witnessed. Beams of pure white light that simply erased everything they touched. No explosions, no debris. The swarm bioships hit by these beams ceased to exist, their matter converted to energy in an instant. Other weapons followed. Projectiles moving at a significant fraction of light speed, each one containing enough kinetic energy to shatter a small moon. They punched through swarm vessels like bullets through paper, the impacts creating brief miniature stars as matter was compressed beyond any reasonable limit. Then came the exotic weapons. Zekthal watched in awe as localized gravity wells appeared in the middle of swarm formations, crushing dozens of bioships into singularities before evaporating. Plasma lances heated to temperatures that shouldn't exist outside a star's core, carved through the enemy like a knife through flesh. The swarm tried to respond. They turned their full attention to this new threat, launching themselves at the Dark Fleet with the same mindless ferocity they had shown the Council forces. It made no difference. The dark ships moved with impossible precision, their point defense systems intercepting every swarm attack. Missiles were destroyed before they could arm. Bioships attempting to ram the newcomers were vaporized at a distance. It wasn't a battle, it was an execution. 8 minutes. That's how long it took. 8 minutes to destroy a swarm force that had been on the verge of annihilating the last organized resistance in the galaxy. 8 minutes to reduce 500,000 bioships to scattered atoms and fading energy signatures. When it was over, silence fell across the battlefield. The Council fleet hung in space, battered and burning but alive. 50,000 ships that had been preparing to die suddenly found themselves witnesses to a miracle, or perhaps a nightmare. It was hard to tell which. The Dark Fleet maintained their formation, not moving, not communicating. Just waiting. Someone say something, Zekthal whispered. Identify yourselves. Tell us who you are. But no communication came. The mysterious fleet remained silent, their dark ships like monuments in the void. Hours passed. The Council ships began emergency repairs, treating their wounded, counting their dead. Through it all, the Dark Fleet watched. Zekthal tried every communication frequency he knew. He broadcast in every major galactic language. He even tried old archaic protocols from the historical databases. Nothing. Then 15 hours after the battle had ended, a single transmission finally came. It was audio only, a voice speaking in perfect galactic common with a strange accent that sounded almost musical. This is Admiral Helena Vasquez of the Terran Expeditionary Fleet. We received your distress call. We apologize for the delay in our response. The communication channel was filled with shocked silence. Terrans, humans. The legends were real. We request permission to dock with Korova Station and send a delegation to meet with the Galactic Council. We have much to discuss. Zekthal found his voice, though it came out as barely more than a whisper. Permission granted, Admiral, and thank you. You're welcome, Commander. There was a pause, and when the human voice returned, it carried a note of something that might have been sadness. Though I must ask, why did you wait so long to call? We've been watching your losses for months. We could have helped sooner if only you had activated the beacon earlier. Sekathal had no answer for that. How could he explain that no one had believed? That the Council had dismissed humanity as fairy tales and ancient myths? We didn't know, he finally said. We didn't know you were real. Another pause, longer this time. We're real, Admiral Vasquez said softly. And we're here now. Let's make sure this never happens again. The emergency session of the Galactic Council was the most attended meeting in recorded history. Every species, every faction, every minor delegation that could secure a seat wanted to witness this moment. The return of humanity. Ambassador Kelrix arrived early, his 4 eyes scanning the chamber nervously. He had spent the past week reviewing every scrap of historical data about humans. The more he read, the more worried he became. Humans had been aggressive, expansionist, dangerous. They had nearly started 3 separate wars in the 50 years before their disappearance. And now they were back, with a military fleet that had just demonstrated the ability to erase entire armadas in minutes. Archivist Thunora floated into the chamber in her water sphere, her skin rippling with colors that indicated excitement and vindication. She had been right all along. The legends were true. Nervous? She asked Kelrix through her sphere's speakers. Terrified, Kelrix admitted. What if they decide to conquer us? Who could stop them? They saved us, Thunora reminded him. If they wanted conquest, they could have let the swarm finish the job and then claim the ruins. Perhaps. Or perhaps they simply want the galaxy intact when they take it. The discussion was cut short as the chamber's main doors opened. A group of humans walked in, and every being in the room fell silent. They were strange creatures, these humans. Bipedal, as the old record said, standing roughly 2 meters tall. Their skin tones varied from pale pink to deep brown. They moved with a fluid grace that suggested excellent muscle control, but it was their eyes that captured attention. Forward-facing, like predators, every human in the delegation swept their gaze across the chamber, assessing, calculating. Leading them was a woman in a dark uniform. Her hair was black with strands of gray pulled back in a tight bun. She walked with absolute confidence, the kind that came from knowing exactly how powerful you were and feeling no need to prove it. Honored members of the Galactic Council, she said, her voice clear and strong. I am Admiral Helena Vasquez, commanding officer of the Terran Expeditionary Fleet. On behalf of humanity and the Terran Accord, I greet you. The Council's senior chairman, an elderly avian named Kresh, gestured for the humans to take their seats. The delegation sat, moving in perfect synchronization. Admiral Vasquez, Kresh began, his voice wavering slightly. We have many questions. Perhaps we should start with the most obvious. Where have you been? Vasquez nodded. I'll be direct, as that's the human way. 900 years ago, our ancestors made a decision. They recognized that humanity was young, aggressive, and expanding too quickly. We were causing tension with multiple species. Several conflicts nearly escalated to war. She paused, letting that sink in. Our leadership at the time faced a choice: continue on our path and likely become a threat to galactic peace, or withdraw voluntarily. We chose withdrawal. We retreated beyond the edge of charted space into the galactic halo where few species ventured. You just left? Ambassador Kelrix asked, unable to contain himself. We left to grow up, Vasquez corrected. To mature as a species. To build a civilization that could coexist with others without constant conflict. We gave ourselves time to evolve socially, philosophically, and technologically. Another human, a man with steel-gray hair, leaned forward. I am Dr. Marcus Chen, Chief Historian of the Terran Accord. Before we left, we established the Sentinel Network, 13 monitoring stations positioned around the galactic rim, each one equipped with long-range sensors and a beacon that would activate if galactic civilization faced an existential threat. You've been watching us, Thunora said. For 8 centuries you've been watching. Yes, Vasquez confirmed. We never truly left. We just stepped back, watching from the shadows, ready to return if needed. The swarm met the activation threshold 3 weeks ago. The moment we received your distress signal, we mobilized. Kelrix felt his anxiety growing. How large is your fleet, Admiral? The expeditionary force that responded to your call consists of 4,200 warships. That's approximately 15% of our active military. The number hit the chamber like a physical blow. 4,000 ships was only 15%. That meant the Terrans had a fleet of nearly 30,000 warships. The entire council could barely muster 10,000, and most of those were light escorts. How many systems do you control? Kresh asked quietly. 2,147 star systems, Dr. Chen answered. Our population is approximately 3 trillion across various planets, habitats, and megastructures. Silence again. The council controlled fewer than 500 systems with a combined population of 1 trillion. You must understand our concern, Kresh said carefully. You possess overwhelming military superiority. You have numbers, technology, and strategic position. What assurance do we have that you won't simply take control of the galaxy you just saved? It was the question everyone had been thinking. The chamber held its collective breath. Admiral Vasquez smiled, though it was a sad expression. Because if we wanted to rule, we would have never left in the first place. Our ancestors withdrew specifically to avoid becoming conquerors. That principle is foundational to modern human civilization. She stood, walking to the chamber's central display. With a gesture, she activated a holographic star map. It showed the galaxy, with Terran space highlighted in blue and Council space in green. This is why we came back, she said. We've been monitoring the galactic rim for centuries. The swarm was just the beginning. Our long-range sensors have detected 3 other potential extinction-level threats in unexplored space. Things that make the swarm look like a minor infestation. The hologram zoomed out, showing threat zones marked in angry red. Here, in the northern spiral arm, we've detected energy signatures consistent with a machine intelligence, self-replicating, exponentially growing, consuming raw materials to build more of itself. If it reaches inhabited space, it won't stop until it's consumed every bit of matter in the galaxy. She pointed to another region. Here, in the southern sectors, there's evidence of something we call the void. A region of space where stars are simply disappearing. We don't know what it is, but it's growing. A third area lit up. And here, something is sending out signals in a mathematical language we can't decode. Whatever it is, it's ancient and powerful, and it started moving toward inhabited space. The council members stared at the map in horror. They had been so focused on the swarm, they hadn't realized the true scale of threats lurking in the darkness. We didn't come back to conquer, Vasquez said quietly. We came back because someone needs to stand guard. Someone needs to watch the edges of civilization and make sure these things don't reach the innocent species trying to live their lives in peace. She turned to face the council directly. We're offering a partnership. The Sentinel Alliance, we're calling it. Humanity will maintain early warning networks and rapid response fleets at the galaxy's boundaries. We'll share defensive technology and training. In return, we ask only to be welcomed back into the galactic community we once abandoned. You ask for nothing else? Kelrix asked, suspicious. No tribute? No territory? Nothing else, Vasquez confirmed. We've learned something in our centuries of isolation. We learned that true strength isn't about domination. It's about choosing to protect those who cannot protect themselves. We're lonely out there in the darkness, Ambassador. We've missed being part of something larger. Thunora's tentacles moved in her sphere, a gesture of profound emotion among her people. You really did grow up, she whispered. Vasquez smiled at her. We had to. Our ancestors knew that if humanity was going to survive, we needed to become something better than conquerors. We needed to become guardians instead. 3 months had passed since the Battle of Korova Station. 3 months since humanity had returned from the darkness and changed the galaxy forever. Ambassador Kelrix stood on the observation deck of the newly constructed Sentinel Command Station, watching human and council ships conduct joint training exercises. A year ago, he would have called anyone who suggested such a scene insane. Now it was reality. Beautiful, isn't it? Admiral Vasquez said, joining him at the viewport. Kelrix clicked his mandibles in agreement. I must admit I was skeptical of your intentions. I thought you would eventually reveal a hidden agenda. And now? Now I think you're genuinely what you claim to be. Protectors. Though I'm still learning to trust that. Vasquez nodded. Trust takes time. We understand that. We're willing to earn it. Outside, a council destroyer executed a defensive maneuver that would have been impossible 3 months ago. Its human tactical advisors had taught the crew new strategies, new ways of thinking about combat. Not the brutal, direct approach of the swarm, but something more sophisticated. Human warfare, Kelrix had learned, was about information, positioning, and overwhelming your enemy before they could respond. The Sentinel Alliance had been officially ratified 6 weeks ago, though not without controversy. A faction of Council species had opposed the agreement, fearing that humanity would eventually dominate galactic affairs. They called themselves the Sovereignty Coalition, and they demanded that the Council maintain complete independence from Terran influence. The humans had surprised everyone by supporting the Coalition's right to remain separate. We don't need everyone to join, Vasquez had told the Council. The Sentinel Alliance is voluntary. Any species that wishes to maintain independence is welcome to do so. We'll still defend them if they're threatened, but they're under no obligation to participate in joint operations. That decision had done more to build trust than anything else. The Terrans weren't demanding compliance. They were offering partnership and respecting those who declined. Of course, practical concerns were beginning to sway opinions. The technology sharing agreement alone made membership attractive. Humans weren't giving away their most advanced weapons, but they were sharing defensive systems, medical technology, and agricultural improvements. Species that joined the Alliance found their quality of life improving dramatically. How many members now? Kelrix asked. 63 species have signed the Alliance Charter, Vasquez replied. Another 20 are in negotiations. The Sovereignty Coalition has about 40 species who've committed to maintaining independence. And you're fine with that division? Democracy means respecting the right to disagree. If some species want to go their own way, that's their choice. We're not here to force unity. A communication alert chimed. Vasquez answered, listening intently for a moment before her expression hardened. Understood. I'm on my way. She turned to Kelrix. We've detected a breach in the northern rim. A scout ship from that machine intelligence I mentioned. It's entered inhabited space. What do we do? We respond. Exactly as we promised. She gestured for Kelrix to follow. Come with me. You should see how the Alliance works in practice. They arrived at the command center to find it buzzing with activity. Humans and aliens worked side by side at control stations, coordinating a response with impressive efficiency. Archivist Thunora was already there, her sphere positioned near the central display. The scout ship entered the Carven system 20 minutes ago, she reported. Local defense forces engaged, but their weapons had no effect. The machine simply absorbed the damage and incorporated it into its structure. On the screen, sensor data showed a mechanical horror. The scout was roughly the size of a heavy cruiser, but it wasn't built. It had grown, assembling itself from whatever materials it found. Even as they watched, it was harvesting an asteroid, its tendrils breaking down rock and metal into base components. Time to reach inhabited planets? Vasquez asked. 4 hours at its current speed. A human tactical officer replied. That's a problem. Vasquez opened a communication channel. All Sentinel ships in sectors 9 through 12 converge on Carven system. Authorization Vasquez Alpha 1. This is not a drill. Across multiple star systems, Terran warships received the order and jumped into hyperspace. But they weren't alone. Council ships that had completed Alliance training jumped with them, responding as a unified force. Fleet Commander Zekthal's voice came through the channel. Terran Command, this is Battle Group 7. We're closest to Carven, requesting permission to engage while we wait for reinforcements. Permission granted, Commander, Vasquez replied. Try to contain it, but don't take unnecessary risks. If conventional weapons don't work, fall back and wait for the heavy ships. Understood. Zekthal out. Kelrix watched the tactical display as friendly forces converged on Carven. This is what you meant by rapid response. Exactly. We maintain fleets at strategic positions around the rim. Any threat that emerges gets met immediately by the closest available forces. No more waiting weeks for reinforcements while colonies die. The first engagement began. Zekthal's battle group dropped out of hyperspace and opened fire on the machine scout. Plasma weapons scored direct hits, but as predicted, they had minimal effect. The machine's hull seemed to absorb the energy and use it to accelerate its own repair processes. Fascinating and terrifying, Thunora observed. It's learning from our attacks. Which is why we brought something special, Vasquez said. She opened another channel. Destroyer Prometheus, you are weapons free. Target the scout with EMP torpedoes. A Terran destroyer broke from the formation and launched a spread of specialized missiles. They detonated around the machine scout in bursts of electromagnetic energy. The scout's systems flickered and failed. its tendrils going limp as the pulse overloaded its control systems. "Follow up with kinetic strikes," Vasquez ordered. "Don't give it time to adapt." Railgun rounds traveling at relativistic speeds slammed into the disabled scout. Without active defenses, the machine couldn't absorb or deflect the impacts. Metal shredded, circuits fried, and within minutes, the threat was reduced to expanding debris. "Target neutralized," Zekthal reported. "Minimal damage to Alliance forces. No casualties." The command center erupted in cheers. Humans and aliens celebrated together, the victory belonging to everyone. Kelrix felt something shift in his perception. This wasn't human forces saving helpless council species. This was genuine cooperation, with both sides contributing to success. Zekthal's battle group had provided reconnaissance and initial engagement, keeping the machine scout occupied. Human ships had delivered the specialized weapons needed to finish the job. Together, they were stronger than either could be alone. "This is just the beginning," Vasquez said, reading his thoughts. "Every joint operation makes us more effective. Every training exercise builds trust. In a few years, the Alliance fleet will be something truly special." "And the threats on the rim?" Kelrix asked. "We'll face them together. Some will defeat easily, like this scout. Others will test us. But that's fine. We're ready to be tested." She smiled. "After 8 centuries of preparation, humanity is finally doing what we were meant to do, which is standing in the darkness so others can live in the light." Months turned into a year. The Sentinel Alliance grew stronger with each passing day. Human technology merged with Council innovation, creating hybrid systems more effective than either alone. Joint crews learned to work together, combining human tactical doctrine with alien perspectives to develop entirely new strategies. The Sovereignty Coalition watched all this with growing uncertainty. Their independence was respected, but they couldn't ignore the benefits Alliance members were receiving. One by one, Coalition members began requesting Alliance membership. Kelrix found himself leading many of these negotiations, his transformation from skeptic to advocate complete. He had learned what Thunora had understood from the beginning. Humanity had genuinely changed. They were still warriors, still powerful, but that power was now directed toward protection rather than conquest. One evening, Kelrix, Thunora, and Zekthal gathered in an observation lounge, watching the stars together. They had become friends, the three of them, bound by shared experience. "Do you think we'll ever truly be safe?" Zekthal asked. "With all these threats lurking in the darkness?" "No," Thunora said simply. "Safety is an illusion. There will always be dangers. But now we're not facing them alone," Kelrix added. "That makes all the difference." Admiral Vasquez joined them, carrying data pads for each. "I wanted you to see these. Preliminary scans of the deep void regions. We're finding more than we expected out there." The data was sobering. Dozens of potential threats, each one capable of destroying civilizations. But accompanying each threat assessment was a response plan, a strategy, a coordinated approach. "Humanity spent 8 centuries preparing for this," Vasquez said, studying every possible threat scenario, wargaming against theoretical enemies, building weapons and defenses for battles we hoped would never come. Now all that preparation has purpose. "You really did this for us," Thunora said softly. "You prepared for centuries just so you could protect species you'd never met." "Not just for you," Vasquez corrected gently. "For everyone. For the principle that civilization deserves protection. For the idea that someone should stand watch while others sleep safely." She looked out at the stars, her expression distant. "My ancestor was a council officer at Korova. She died in the battle minutes before we arrived. I carry her name. Helena Vasquez, 5 generations removed but connected by blood and purpose." "I'm sorry," Kelrix said quietly. "Don't be. Her sacrifice and millions of others like it are why we do this, why we'll keep doing this for as long as necessary." She turned back to them, smiling. "The galaxy isn't safe. It never will be. But together we can face whatever comes out of the darkness." Through the viewport, a new fleet was assembling, human and council ships in perfect formation, ready to deploy to the galactic rim, ready to stand watch, ready to defend a civilization that had once thought humanity was nothing but legend. Admiral Vasquez raised her datapad in a toast. "To the Sentinel Alliance. To partnership. To the future." The others raised their pads in response. Outside, among the stars, the beacon network activated. Points of light spread across the galaxy's edge, forming a protective web. Each beacon transmitted the same message, updated now for a new era. The Terrans have returned, and we will never let the darkness take you. In the darkness between stars, things that had been advancing toward inhabited space detected those signals. Some paused, some retreated. Some, more foolish than the rest, continued forward. They would learn soon enough what the swarm had learned at Korova Station. Humanity was home, and humanity was watching.